Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office breakdown for this past weekend. But before we do that, please make sure you smash the like button, light up that fire button if you're watching on Odyssey, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. Man, it is hard to say that sometimes. But before going into the actual numbers themselves, I did want to take the moment to, one, thank everybody for their tremendous generosity in helping out Tina recently. Again, it was awesome that we were able to reach the goal in less than 2 days. So again, thank you so very much to anyone that helped out in that GoFundMe campaign. But I would also like to ask for prayers and thoughts to be sent towards the people of Louisiana. As you know, I'm from New Orleans. I have friends and family that are down in the New Orleans area right now. Literally, as I'm recording this, you have a hurricane that it's a Category 4 hitting, Hurricane Ida, or Ida, whatever it is that you want to pronounce it as, hitting that area, and there's going to be a lot of devastation there. So all of my family is at the moment safe and have been hunkered down, but obviously there are people that are along the Gulf Coast, along the coastline especially, many of whom, because of just resisting previous warnings and previous hurricanes and making it through previous hurricanes, decided not to. And this is obviously a very different animal, as every single hurricane is different. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and I would very much appreciate that. All right, let's go ahead and dive into these numbers. And so really only one major release came out this weekend, and that was Candyman, which is a new horror film from Universal, which ended up winning the weekend with $22.3 million in the domestic marketplace. Not really a big surprise for this film to come in at number one, though Free Guy did a very impressive third week, only a 27% drop. Keep in mind, its week 1 to week 2 drop-off was much less than 50%, as most films are. So this film continuing to do pretty well with $13.5 million in its third week of release, even with losing 225 theaters. Paw Patrol in its second weekend dropped 50%. Again, that is about standard what we see for films in general, but there's actually some good news coming Paw Patrol's way because of what it's been able to make worldwide, and also based on the minimum budget that the film actually had. Jungle Cruise came in at number 4 with another $5 million, but that film has been cursed by the fact that even though it is now crossing the $100 million mark, it has officially done it, everybody. It made $100 million domestically. Even if you add into any of the claimed Disney Plus Premier Access numbers, it cost way too much money for them to be able to make it back, and so it is still a massive flop. Don't Breathe 2 coming in its third week dropped another 44% to make $2.8 million, and The Suicide Squad still hanging around, still, again, not making much money because of a wide variety of reasons, coming in here, though, with another $2 million. Well, you have films that came out last week, The Protege and Reminiscence, falling off a pretty fair amount. Protege, 43%. Reminiscence, massive 58%, which for a second weekend drop-off to only make $820,000. Yeah, you can make the argument all you want about it being on HBO Max. The fact is that people really weren't driven to go see this movie starring Hugh Jackman, even though I thought the film was, it was okay. And that, I think, is the reason why you're seeing low numbers here. It's not just because of COVID. It's not just because of streaming. Again, those are definitely factors. But I think another big major factor is the fact that we don't have films that people are really wanting to go see. That Hollywood is either putting out films that are sequels, prequels, reboots, or just concepts that people are kind of tired of seeing. It's kind of similar to what you would have expected during the pandemic when you still had sports and you had people at home, and yet those ratings went down. And the reason why was because the product that was being given was something that people just didn't want it. The people didn't want it. They instead got a bunch of political messaging, and they instead got, games with no audiences, with no crowds, which has an impact on the game itself. And so it makes a lot of sense, as I said, as to why not only did you see that happen with sporting events, you're also now seeing it with theaters. You can almost look at it in the same exact light, where, again, you can blame a lot of different things for it, but at the end of the day, if you're not giving the product that people want, or a product that people want, it doesn't matter what the other factors are, you're going to end up having a bad time. So let's go ahead and dive into these numbers. So Candyman worldwide has made $27.9 million as a horror film. I don't expect it to make too much money internationally by the end of its run, but again, pretty strong showing so far for this film, which also did not cost a whole lot to make. Also, Free Guy, as I said, still doing pretty well, not only making $100 million internationally, but likely on pace to make $100 million at least here in the United States, $179.6 million worldwide. Still very much a film that needs to make a lot of money back in order for it to be profitable. Remember that Disney is not going to have a loss on this because this was something that was already paid for by 20th Century. But when you buy a company, you also buy any potential losses too. So again, depending on how you look at it, it could be a loss or it could just be them just not making really any profit or money off of this film. Paw Patrol, and as you can see, I do have this open on Box Office Mojo because sometimes the numbers are a little off. I typically go with whatever the highest number is to try and make it the most fair possible. Paw Patrol is said to have made $61.8 million worldwide, making $37 million internationally, which is a kind of amazing thing. Again, I know very little Paw Patrol except that my little nephew used to watch it back in the day, so it looks like it has a pretty successful outing, and it did not cost as much to make as a lot of other animated films go, so it's actually already seeing some profits from it. The Protégé, which looked like another standard femme fatale movie featuring Michael Keaton, not making really anything. Again, $5.8 million. It's just not very good. This may have been another one of those movies, actually, to be honest, that Box Office Mojo was a little bit higher. I think I just forgot to bring this one over. I think it's up to $10 million worldwide. Either way, the fact that it's only made $10 million and it's a theatrically exclusive film is not a very good sign for this. And this is also a movie that it's impossible to find the budget for, so could be a financial loss, most likely, but it's really hard to say at this point in time. Reminiscence is absolutely a financial loss for Warner Brothers once again, because even though it didn't cost nearly as much as one might suspect, it's not making that much money either. Don't Breathe 2 making $35.2 million. Again, this is a movie that I don't remember a lot of people asking for, but again, it's making, I guess, something at the box office. And The Suicide Squad, which again, a lot of people are still defending as a good movie, even though it is not, $154 million worldwide. Not even getting close to $100 million domestically, barely breaking $100 million internationally. And when you compare that to some of the other films that I mentioned, you can argue HBO Max and all the other things that you want to try and make excuses for it. At the end of the day, it's a film that did not bring enough people to actually go out and watch it. And until we can actually have direct numbers of new subscribers who joined HBO Max just for this movie, or people that kept their HBO Max just for this movie, you can't use those as reasons to explain the profitability or potential profitability of this movie. So in the end, all we have is the massive budget, the very small box office return, and we have ourselves a box office flop. Let's go ahead and look at the box office tracking. As I said, we have $27.5 million here for Candyman. I don't have the budget in for this film yet, but I can say it was around the $15 to $20 million mark. So you're looking at a film that very likely in the next week or two will reach that point of profitability because of such a low cost of the actual film itself. It's not guaranteed, right, to be a massive hit necessarily, but it seems to have had a strong enough opening weekend where if it has a 50% drop, which is typical of most films, in its week 1 to week 2, it will be able to make some of that money back. We can make some projections now for films like Reminiscence and Paw Patrol, also The Protégé as well. So as you can see, Reminiscence actually was around $5 million in its opening, $10 million as of this weekend. So with that being said, Reminiscence is expected to make somewhere between $15 and $21 million by the end of its run. Seeing that film had a $68 million budget, this film is set to lose anywhere between $89 and $92 million. So almost a $100 million loss for Warner Brothers. And again, Warner Brothers has had consistent $100 to $200 million losses for most of their films. And it makes me continue to ask that question of, where are they getting their money from? Obviously, they're making a lot of money from subscriptions in general from HBO Max and other places. Obviously, their HBO service, too, is still making a lot of money because people still pay for old school HBO. And obviously, that is costing way more than it should. So they're not really stretched for cash at this point. But at some point, someone's got to look at their movie division and say, we're not really making money here, guys. We're kind of just spending a lot of money and not making anything back on our investments. Maybe we need to rethink things. Maybe we need to go in a different direction here. We also have Paw Patrol coming out in its second weekend, as I said, making $61 million this weekend. So this film is expected to make anywhere between $88 and $123 million. And with a $26 million production budget, again, very low for an animated film, I would say, the film is expected to make anywhere between $14 and $35 million in actual net gain profit. Currently, right now, sitting at negative 1.8. So by next weekend, this film will indeed be in the profitability territory. You have The Protege, as I mentioned. It actually did only make 5.8 million. So actually that number was correct. So opening weekend was around 2.9, second weekend 5.8. No one is going to see this theatrically exclusive film, which again, some people try and point to certain films to say theaters are back, baby. And then there's other films like this that come out to say, yeah, really not really quite there yet, which is also why I would suspect that films like Spider-Man Far From Home or even other films like The Eternals might even get pushed back at some point because, again, people aren't going to the theater. And especially if you're going to provide films that people don't actually want to see, with the exception being Spider-Man, I do think there are a lot of people that would want to go see Spider-Man in an actual theater, and it will be theatrically exclusive since because of Sony's dealing, they will not be able to have the film on Disney+. You're looking at a film that likely will get delayed, if anything, but even if it doesn't, probably will be the most financially successful film of the year as far as raw number goes, but because it's going to cost a massive amount of money, will it be profitable or not? That, again, still very much remains to be seen. But as I said, with Reminiscence making so little and yet still costing around $68 million or so, again, massive loss there. Paw Patrol is doing well. I was talking about The Protege. So The Protege cost, again, we did not find, this is a guess on my part. There is no actual stated budget for this film, so I just guessed that it probably cost around $20 million because it is, an action type role featuring people like Michael Keaton, featuring people like Maggie Q. So it probably costs more than this, but based just on what films like this typically cost, I was very conservative with my estimates, saying let's assume it costs $20 million to make, meaning it would cost around $30 million when you actually add in marketing costs. This film is likely going to be a financial loss, so probably even higher than this if the production budget was higher. So again, between a $22 and $24 million loss for The Protege. And again, not really all that surprising at that point. Free Guy, as I mentioned before, we were estimating between $111 and $159 million. Sorry, not that. We were expecting $159 to $223 million in the range. This movie is doing very well. It's at $179.6 million. This film already is at that 62% range. What that means is that based on the first 2 weeks account for 62% of its total. So it's already reaching that median that I typically have in my predictions. This is a film that very well could get to the highest end of my projections because the legs seem to be doing pretty well. But also, again, if you are still new to my box office breakdowns, if you want to see how my predictions end up doing on any of the films that come out, you can actually check these charts and check them back, every now and then, because as you can see, most of the films that have come out fall somewhere between the 50 and 70% range, which is where my numbers are. There are some exceptions where you'll get into the 40s or something where it's even higher into the upper 70s, but normally films will fall somewhere in that category as far as their first 2 weeks compared to their final result. So what we're looking at here again is a box office that is acting somewhat normal. The issue is that it's just not producing a lot of money, not putting a lot of butts into seats. And so even though Candyman is, again, supreme with 27.5 million, and I think very few would have thought that a movie like that could make that much money in an opening weekend. Is it going to be enough? Again, really time will tell, but because of a lower budget for that film specifically, it likely will be able to make its money back. But there are so many films now that are just financial failures. Again, going back to the Suicide Squad, for instance, this is a movie that right now is at negative $184 million. Again, it's still expected to lose well over $100 million. Jungle Cruise also in the same category as well. So we're still in the year of flops. Candyman, could it do anything? Can the Candyman can? Well, the Candyman kind of can, I guess you could say. But we'll have to wait for next week for some official predictions on that. But what are your thoughts about this? Have you seen Candyman? Are you surprised by any of these films in their second weekend not doing as well? And also, are you still surprised that films like The Suicide Squad or Jungle Cruise or these massive budget films coming from these major companies aren't doing as well? Again, personally, I do not see it as much as a surprise, but let me know your thoughts about this and anything I mentioned in the comments section below. If you like this video, make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button. It really does mean a lot. Also, please continue to pray for, again, friends and family that I have down in New Orleans, but also, of course, the entire Louisiana Gulf Coast who is getting hammered right now. Again, they need our thoughts and prayers, and in the aftermath, I'm sure they're also going to need our help. So again, thank you very much for anyone who's able to at least send some positive vibes or prayers that way. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Shout out to GomerKyle79 for being a member on Patreon. Have a wonderful day, and as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my August Locals, Patreon, and Subscribe Star members, starting off with my Locals crew, Cat's App, The Real It, D Sharp, Biffer the Hobbit, Robert Barnes, and Goblin Squatch. Thank you all very much for supporting me over on Locals. And now on to my Patreon members: Andrew Hoyle, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Dion, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Jonathan Carney, Lance, Laura, the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Allen, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Patreon. And lastly, to my Subscribe Star peeps: Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heiss / the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. And a shout out to one new member, Hannibal Grimm. And a huge shout out to newest members, Brandon and Joe Horn. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Subscribestar, and to everyone for supporting me on these platforms. Also, a shout out to all of my YouTube members. You get shouted out at the end of every single live stream. And if you want to have your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and every video, please check out my Locals Patreon Subscribestar. And you can go ahead and find those links in the top link of this description. You can find it's called the Willow link, and it'll have a list to literally all of the social media platforms and all of the different ways that you can support the channel. If you join at the $1 level, you can actually get your name shouted out at the end of every single video and live stream. $5 level gives you that, plus you get access to exclusive giveaways of 4K titles. Right now, I've got tons of 4K steelbooks to give away this month, including for Top Gun. I also have A Quiet Place Part 2. I have Snatch on 4K, the John Wick trilogy on 4K, and also I have a Sicario 4K disc as well, and a bunch of others that are going to be coming in this month too. So if you want to have access to any of those types of exclusive giveaways, join at the Army of Asgard level. At the $10 level, the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get all of that, plus you get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, including instant reactions when I go to see movies. I do quick little filmings of myself and talk about the films that I have seen and my instant reactions to that. You also get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger once or twice a month, and you get to also ask us any question that you want. We put a Q&A post up, and you get to ask us whatever it is that you want to ask. So again, if that sounds cool to you, Keeper of the Bifrost level. And lastly, there's the Chosen of Valhalla level, where you get all that stuff. Plus, in your first month as a Chosen of Valhalla member, you get a free t-shirt, your choice, ship it anywhere in the world, and also you get to once a month be featured on the OMB Reviews channel, and you get to talk with me. We usually chill out for 3 to 4 hours, and I ask everyone what they've been watching, what they want to talk about, what they want to promote, and it's always a really good time. And so if that sounds interesting to you, please consider joining. That is going to be on Subscribestar and on Patreon only, as Locals is just the Keeper of the Bifrost level. But anyway, thank you all very much for your time, for your support, and for listening to this shout-out video. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.